that there's only Matthew and Ben, or Matthew and I right now. Ben's going to be joining us in a little bit. He had a little veterinary emergency this morning. All right. Everybody's tuning in here. Dirty jurors. I don't even know what that means. All right. So a bunch of guys submitted questions that we'll be getting to. So I have a deck presentation that I'll be launching into in just a second. I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to filter in here. It's 193 participants, but I think probably we should just get going, right, Matthew?
I think so too. Think so too.
So just to let you guys know, we are live. It's August 31st, and I think it's a Friday, and it's 11:03 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to be sharing with you guys today another segment that is an extraction from the Business Bootcamp, which I hope some of you are intrigued enough to join us today. We had this goal. We want to have 2 more people enroll by the end of this webinar. Let's see if that can happen. And I got some surprise announcements at the end of this thing. It truly is a surprise because I just sprung it on Matthew and Ben last night at around 7:30 p.m. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my deck. All right, so Q&A. Oh, there we go. All right.
Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of context of how this will work, Chris is going to do just like share some information with you guys. But for those of you guys joining on Zoom, if you guys have questions, there's little buttons below where there's a Q&A section. If you have questions, just drop your question in there. Of course, we're going to wait till Chris is done saying his bit, and then I'll interject and bring your questions up as they become relevant.
Okay. The reason why we're doing this webinar for everybody that's tuning in is because I think there are people, a handful of people that are still kind of on the fence thinking about whether or not they want to join us for the bootcamp or not. I know it's a big commitment in terms of dollars, and I get that. And so hopefully we're going to clarify a couple of things. Now, for this specific webinar today, we're really going to talk about how to scale your business beyond you, the solopreneur, just one person. So there are questions coming in about legal things and contracts, and we're not going to talk about it on this webinar. So if that's what you tune in for, stick around for something else, or tune in for something else. This is not the thing that you want to stick around for. Okay. We're going to talk about how you can grow beyond just being one person. Okay. I'm going to share my deck right now. Where's my deck? There it is. Matthew, you can see that?
I can see it.
Play. Okay. Oh, I can't do that. Oh man, because I got this dual screen set up. All right, anyways. All right. Sorry, a little fumblage here. Zoom in there. Come on, help me out here. It won't go to that exact size. There, that's good enough. Anyways, this is the Business Bootcamp. Today we're going to talk about how to grow your business beyond one person. And we're going to spend about 45 minutes. So this is going to be super intense, and we're going to move pretty fast here because I have a lot of things to cover. While I was putting together this presentation, I saw on Twitter, Mr. Blair Enns, the guy who wrote Win Without Pitching Manifesto and Pricing Creativity. If you've been following this channel, you'll know that I've been referencing him and his teachings quite a bit. So he put out this tweet. He says, if you can write a check to solve the problem, then you don't really have a problem, do you? Just let that sink in a little bit. A lot of you guys are complaining about having problems about growth, about being overworked, not having enough information. But if you can spend money, write a check to get rid of that problem, then really the only challenge to you achieving what it is that you want to achieve is yourself and why you're holding yourself back. And there's a lot of reasons why potentially you guys don't hire other people, but I boil it down to 3 things for this webinar because it would be too much otherwise. Really, there's issues about trust. Can I hire somebody? Will they do the work? Are they going to do the work as good as I can do it? Are they going to be as fast? And this is an issue of efficiency because you're always the fastest person, right? Maybe, maybe not. And can I afford to do this? How do I know when I can scale? How do I know it's the right time to hire? So we're going to dive right into that. Now, I have a presentation, but you guys keep asking the questions. Make sure it's relevant to the topic that we're talking about today, like right now, and then we'll do our best to answer as many of those as possible. So here, what I've done is I've tried to capture the sentiment that some of you guys are thinking. It goes something like this. How can I trust others to do the work at the same level of quality as me? Well, here's another way of saying that. This is from Russell Naveen, who submitted a question via the webinar registration. How does one prevent dilution of one's vision whilst expanding a business. Must be a UK person, that whilst. How does one prevent dilution of one's vision whilst expanding a business? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about hiring, and then not really too much about firing, but there are two sides to the same coin. The reason why I can't talk about firing, because that's a deep dive into how to fire people. And the reason why I even bring it up right now is because one of the main reasons why people don't hire other creatives is they don't have the heart to fire other people. And if that's going to be one of your limiting beliefs, it's going to be very hard for you to grow your company. There are right and wrong ways to fire people, but that is the first hurdle you need to get over. You got to get over your own fear of saying this isn't working out to somebody. Okay. Here are some things that you need to think about when you're looking at a potential freelancer who may or may not turn into a potential employee staff person for you down the line. Some questions to ask yourself. Does the body of work that they're producing match what it is that I'm looking for, what you're looking for? It's often in our minds when we see something that is kind of close and we only see one or two examples of it, that we take that leap of faith that it's going to be okay. And chances are it might work, but there's a good chance that you're going to be screwed. So what I like to look for is consistency and depth in the body of work that matches what it is I'm looking for. So if you're looking for a really cartoony style, don't get lazy. Keep digging around the internet until you find the one person who has a lot of examples who you feel like is an expert at doing that thing. The next thing you're going to want to do is to determine a fair rate with that person. And I want to get to this really quickly. The reason being is you could fall in love with their work, who they are, their persona, but if you can't afford them, there's really no point. But put an asterisk on that because I want to return to that in just a second, okay? Typically what I like to do is open it up then and say, tell me about your process. How do you like to work with people? And this works for people who are in-house and also for remote freelancers. Just ask them to describe their work process. And it could go something like this. Well, once I get a brief from you, I'll do 2 to 3 sketches and I'll do those in 2 days or 48 hours or something like that. I'll submit it back to you. You can give me feedback and then I'll do 2 or 3 more revisions. And then once we finalize the sketch, I will then finish it, whatever that might be. So in this case, it's probably an illustration thing that I'm thinking of in my head because that's what it sounds like. And if you make any changes past this point, it's going to cost you more money. But historically speaking, I haven't had to charge my clients more money. So it sounds like, okay, that's a pretty clear process. And I need to know that because if I don't understand your process, it creates anxiety within me. And there's something that I want you to think about too on the meta level, which is as I'm reading through this, you could benefit from this information as well, even if you're not hiring somebody. Because if somebody's hiring you, you need to make sure that you know what your rate is going to be, that you know what your process is, and it's clearly defined, okay? Another question I might ask this person is, hey, can you give me a couple of examples of how a successful collaboration has been? And on the other side, tell me when it's not worked, when it's been kind of a disaster for you. And what I'm listening for is how they work with other people and if that feels compatible with the way I want to work. And what you need to do is to be very attentive in listening because you want to spot those red flags. Because if they say something that doesn't jive with how you like to work, you have to pay attention because this is ultimately them telling you right now, it's going to be a poor fit and you're going to be miserable and you're going to regret the day that you hired them. And lastly, you want to define terms and conditions. This doesn't have to be too technical. It can be very simply, what do you require in terms of deposit? How shall I pay you? When is the final payment due? How many revisions do I get? Who owns this work? This is clearly a work for hire. Okay, great. I understand that. So they're going to own the work after it's done. What files do I get? What files do you keep? Will you sign a non-disclosure agreement because some of the materials I'm working on are sensitive to our clients. We can't have you put that out there. And lastly, you could talk about portfolio usage rights and things of that nature. You could put it on your own site, but you can't put it on a company site. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, red flags, here are the red flags, guys. And you'll know this right away. 1, slow response time. If you initially reach out and you notice like it's 2 weeks since they respond, and as each time you inquire, they're very unresponsive, that's a good sign that A, they're probably too busy, or B, maybe they don't care about your business that much. So I like somebody who's going to be responsive and quickly addresses any concerns I have. 2, Does this person take personal responsibility for the work? So while you're asking them to describe a situation where the project has been unsuccessful or a disaster, how often did they say, this is where I screwed up, this is what I learned from it, or do they just blame other people? It's cool to talk about how other people mess it up for you, but ultimately, if it doesn't work out, guess who they're going to be blaming? They're going to be blaming you. So I like to talk to and work with freelancers and designers who say, you know what? It didn't work out. Here's what I learned. Here's how I screwed up. And now that doesn't happen anymore. I also don't like to work with people who don't have a clear process, who don't know how to articulate themselves. So if they're not a good communicator and they're having a hard time saying things, I'm envisioning what the long-term relationship is going to be like. And that may be enough for me to say, I'm concerned here, but maybe I can get through this. But if the work is good enough, maybe I can get through it. I don't know. But these are things you need to spot right away. Whatever point we're on, we're in point 5. I think their work lacks depth, meaning they only have 2 examples of what I'm looking for. And this is why I tell everybody that's paying attention to what we're saying is, to be an expert, you have to show depth. You have to be able to produce many versions of the same thing. If you're an identity designer, show me lots of different things that you've designed identity for. Maybe I'm interested in packaging. Well, show me 10 to 12 pieces there. Or show me enough so I know that you know the ins and outs and you're more of an expert than I am, because that's what I'm hiring you for. Now, I don't want to focus on this too much, but if they sound too eager for the work and desperate, sometimes I get a little suspicious, like what's going on? If somebody's talented, they should be getting this work. And if they're willing to bend over backwards for all kinds of little things and make concessions before I even ask, I'm a little concerned. And lastly, when I ask them, what's your rate? And they can't talk about money, I'm also concerned. I like people who understand the business of their practice and are creative, have depth, but also can talk about it on a business level. Now, guess what? If you take this and you hold this up as a mirror to yourself, ask yourself right now and be honest. How many of these things, how many of these sins are you guilty of? And this could very well be the reason why other people aren't hiring you right now, whether they be other agencies or clients, okay? Next up is art direction. Okay, and art direction is really about having clear goals. You need to have clear goals. Oh, you know what I could do? I'm gonna hide this, I believe. Okay, you need to have clear goals. And the reason why projects screw up is because you're too busy, you don't have enough time, you're not intentional enough in the language that you choose to describe to somebody what it is that you're looking for. So what we want to do is we want to commit this to writing, and it's going to be a combination of a couple of things. It's going to be a combination of checklists and parameters. And let me explain what the difference is between the two. A checklist is an objective mandate. This is a non-negotiable thing. For example, if you're making a 30-second commercial, it cannot be 29 seconds. It cannot be 31 seconds. It has to be 30 seconds. It has to be 1080p. Probably if it's 1080p, then it has to be 24 frames per second. There is no interpretation here. And these are usually things that are given to you by the client, and you want to be able to communicate this to the freelancer or the designer that you're bringing on staff, okay? For example, other things to consider are, these are the fonts we must use. This is the logo we're given. These are the colors we have to use. Okay, so now we understand that. Those are checklists. Parameters, on the other hand, allow some interpretation, and these are subjective goals. Maybe these are more qualitative in nature, and so they can't just be checked off on a box. So if they're saying something like, it needs to feel fresh and organic, and I don't mean in a loose design term, like if they're selling produce or they're serving food, they need to communicate that visually. How do you do that? Well, that's kind of up to the creative person, but now they kind of have a target to hit. So these are variable and open to interpretation. And we find that a combination of the two make for a very clear creative brief. All right, moving on. And the reason why we need to do all that stuff is because as the person that we're bringing on board, as they explore ideas, we don't want them to go so far off that the ideas, although great and are beautiful, have no relevancy to the project itself. And you can use this for yourself, meaning if you are taking on a project, you need to define the checklist and parameters with your client and make sure you stay within the zone. Because oftentimes people feel like when they present creative ideas, they get rejected. More often than not, the problem is because they don't have a clear understanding with the client what the objective is to begin with. Okay. And the reason why we do that is because we want to encourage exploration. We don't want to fill up the creative brief only with checklists, because then it's like, oh, so it's only can be these two options. So then I can activate my own creativity, my own thinking, my free association, connecting dots for you. So when we have a clear goal, we're able to reduce the area of focus, and then we can eliminate ideas that don't fit. And that's the key point there. Okay. All right, Matthew, I'm going to take a little break here because I've been talking too much before I kind of talk through this whole Zoom thing. Why don't we talk to some of the people? So let me stop the share. Boom. Okay, should we answer a question, or I see you've been answering questions, huh?
Yeah, I think there was an easy one earlier about, well, if I'm trying to hire a freelancer and they're charging just as much as me, how do I make profit on that?
Oh, okay. That's fantastic. I have a slide for that. So put that answered and I'll answer it very soon.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, great. I was prepared for that.
Let's see. Okay. So Christian asked, when working with freelancers or new team members, how would you structure the creative brief? What's essential information that needs to be shown for the best outcome? And I think you covered two of them, which is the checklist and the parameters. What else do you typically include in there so that you're getting your team started off right and they're giving you what you need?
Okay. Typically, my team will then produce a stylescape or a mood board or something like that for me to make sure that what I said is reflected in what they hear. And now we want to talk about visual things. Now, if you have a smaller team and you're not used to working that way, you could go out and create some of that yourself. You can assemble some images, some scrap references, things like that, and put it together and say, okay, it kind of looks like this. It's within this palette of ideas, and then they can go with that. But ultimately, that should be somebody else's job, but not yours. Are they looking for something more specific than that, Matthew?
I think it's just like, what else would you include in a creative brief? And things that I would include is, what's the overall goal? I know I'm making a video, but what does that have to do? So I have some context for the client. The other thing that I would include is the audience. Who is this trying to target? So I know I could kind of skew the language towards that particular person, both in visuals and in messaging. And then the other things that I would include outside of the checklist and parameters are important milestones and dates. What do I expect by when? So that you can tell me as a freelancer or somebody that's working for me that either, yes, I can do that, or no, it's too much work. And then we can negotiate or figure out terms or work around the schedule, or if I have to bring on more people. So those things I think are all very key in terms of what to include in a creative brief.
Right. So when we were talking about checklists, I didn't give you a lot of details as to what is included in the checklist, but most of what Matthew just said is included in the checklist. So if you're talking about the target demographic, it would say for men and women, men from 18 to 24 leaving the United States, that could be part of your checklist to make sure the messaging and the design is appropriate for them. And to say that I want to have 2 checkpoints, one at this date, one at that date, at the beginning of the day. Those are part of your checklist, so that everybody's very clear as what they need to do.
Right.
Okay.
In terms of hiring, how do you decide if you're going to hire somebody locally or abroad?
If the project turnaround is really quick, sometimes working with somebody abroad is not an option for us. And if there are more team members that need to collaborate with them, like in a traditional production pipeline, post-production pipeline, when there's a modeler, texture person, a lighting artist, an animator, a compositor, generally speaking, because the files and assets are so big and it gets moved around, we generally like to have people in-house. When the projects have a longer timeline and there's some flexibility, and then I'm more open to working with people on a remote basis. Matthew, do you have a different point of view on that?
Yeah, I agree with if something's very tight, then I just prefer to have people local. But for most instances, I find myself doing a lot more work with remote people. if the skills are the same, it doesn't really matter. All the people I chat with, even in-house, we use Slack and Trello and Notion and things like that where I'm communicating with them digitally anyway. And sometimes I'll go remote and work in my home office just because it doesn't really matter. If the skills are there, if the responsiveness is there, and I'm still getting what I need at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're local or remote.
And how often do you do that in terms of, do you work with the person first in-house, then you say, okay, I like the way you work, I know you're a responsible person, then it doesn't matter if they work in-house or not.
Right. So if it's a really important project, like I'm having them lead a project and I'm very hands off, I need to have had previous experience with them working before. So there's a lot of people I would hire that I've worked with in-house. So I have a very deep relationship. I know how they think, I know how they work and how fast they work. So I could trust them with anything. Where other people, when I'm looking for new remote freelancers, it's usually bite-sized things. So it's like, I need a couple days worth of work, or it's a very small bite-sized task, and I'm willing to try this on somebody completely new. I see your portfolio, we get along online, maybe we're DMing on Instagram or something, but it's like the level of work is there. I'm going to test you on something small and let's see how it goes.
Perfect. Okay. Should we get back into it then?
Yeah, I think let's go back into it. And if you guys have future questions as Chris moves through the material, please drop it in the Q&A section if you're on Zoom with us. Otherwise, everything else you guys should just put in the chat.
Okay. All right. So next up is this belief that no one is as fast as I am at doing what it is that I do. Okay. And that may be true. And you could be the super lightning fast person, but it kind of reminds me of this quote. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And what we're talking about right now is going far. What we want to do is grow. And here's the problem with working alone is that you have an issue with workload balance. And obviously, if you're taking on more than one project at a time, you're going to start to stress out and be working all hours of the night. I've been there before. It's not a good feeling because you can't duplicate yourself. You can't sit there when you're super, super tired and come up with fresh ideas, and you start to work slower and your brain starts to kind of slow down, right? That's a big problem. And this, if you do this for any length of time, will lead you to feeling overworked and ultimately burning out. And I'm not sure about you, but when you reach that critical space or stage when you feel burnt out, it's really, really hard to come back from that. I've seen freelancers, I've seen people who run businesses who are working 15, 16 hours a day without a break and haven't had a vacation or taken a holiday, who don't have a personal relationship, and then they just become zombies. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's that creatives have a certain fuel tank, and once that's completely depleted, you're done. I don't know what it is, but I've seen people like this in the field where they were once super hot superstars, but never learned to share the workload and just did too much, didn't take good care of their mental and physical health, and then led them to just completely burning out. It's something we're trying to avoid here, right? The other thing is you're going to limit your personal and professional growth if you don't learn to work with other people. If we think about how we grow, it's through collaboration, through sharing ideas with other people, through brainstorming, leaning over somebody's shoulder and saying, wow, that's really cool. How'd you do that? Or expanding beyond our own personal skill sets. I can draw okay, but I can't draw like an illustrator can draw. I can't render like a concept artist. I'm not a master of perspective. So when I get to work with those people, guess what? I grow, and the work that our company produces grows. We're able to show more shades of different colors within that digital crayon box, all right? Different colors, different hues, and we can render different images now. Well, forget about having vacation and holidays if you don't learn to work with other people. Because what happens here is when you're not working, you're not making money. So when you leave on a trip, guess what? Those clients, and some of you guys worry about this, they may not call you. They might find someone else to do the work. So you wind up staying and never taking a vacation. And I was guilty of this, even though I had a lot of help. For the first 5 years of running our business, I didn't take a vacation. And that really hurt me mentally. And this will all just lead to creative stagnation because you have to get out into the world. You have to be able to replenish your creative fuel cells so that you can have something else new to add to what it is that you're doing. Okay. Of course, if you don't change this, and many of you guys may listen to this and not change a single thing, you're going to be one of these burnt out people that's not going to be able to offer new ideas. So why should you delegate? Well, there's plenty of really great reasons why you should delegate. One is that it allows you to work on the strategic vision part of your company, which is the single most important part of your company. It'll allow you to do R&D projects, those personal projects where nobody will hire you for it, but you do. And then people will take notice and pay attention to what it is you're doing. And all of a sudden you have a whole new line of work. So for us, here's the case in point. We have been doing motion design work for ad agencies, doing music videos, launch videos, all those kinds of things. And it wasn't until we took some time off, me personally, to think about what else we need to do, that I started to do strategic consultation, branding, messaging, and then we got into all this digital design and digital marketing. And that allowed a whole new revenue source to open up as one revenue source was starting to slow down. If you delegate, you can actually build a sustainable business. And what I mean by that, sustainability means you're able to do this for as long as you want to. You won't run into issues of burning out. You can continue to work while you're on vacation, or if you're sick or unhealthy, or you get into some kind of accident, God forbid, you can build a business that keeps growing. And that's the key. So if you're not growing, then you're dying, you're stagnating. And it's important for you to understand that. So you want to bring on different kinds of people to work with you so that you're always faced with new challenges, not doing the same thing over and over and over again. Another reason why you want to delegate is because you can create jobs for other people. And that's really important. We want to share the wealth. We want to keep the economy moving. So bring other people in to work with you. Don't hold on to it so tight. It's not good for the community, and it's not good for your health. And I mentioned this before. You can produce much better work if you collaborate with people. There are things that the team that works at Blind that they can do that I have no idea how they do it. And it's wonderful to be able to see this. Matthew's done some super complex visual effects work that involves photoreal 3D renderings, super imaginative particle animations. And I just look at it and say, wow, that is amazing. And I'm happy for him. I'm proud of the work that we've done at the studio. And this leads to more work because all I have to do is point our clients to check out that work that Matthew did. I think we're capable of doing the project that you want us to do. It allows us to build the team. And I don't know about you, but I just don't like working by myself. I enjoy sitting down, chatting with people, seeing their creativity, just creating space for them to be a creative person. That excites me. Another thing that really excites me, as you can imagine, is I like to share and to teach others. So another reason why you want to delegate work. And if you're able to do this, and you can see yourself as Batman or the Flash or Green Lantern or Wonder Woman, but together, combined as a group, as a team, you can be unstoppable. Hence the Justice League reference there. Okay. Before we do the last bit here, Matthew, let me take a break here, stop the share, and let's talk to some people. Or do we have somebody we want to bring on? Has anybody asked a really good question? And if they're set up, we can bring them on. We can talk to them.
There is some, it's not quite relevant right now. I think there's a good question to ask maybe towards the end and maybe we cover it. But I think in terms of, I think this is hitting home for a lot of people in terms of sharing the work, collaborating, because people are in this space where it's I'm doing all the work myself and I don't understand the need to delegate or how it will help me grow. So I think you brought some good points to that. I think there's a question here. Let's see. I forget who asked it, but I'll just paraphrase. The idea is, so if you're first starting out and you're just getting out there, do you think it's better to go staff somewhere or go off on your own? And I know this is really early business. It's not a mature business at all, but in terms of personal growth, it's along those lines. So what do you see to be more valuable? I have my experience. I know you have your own in terms of going to different companies or staffing at one for personal growth.
All right.
Sorry, it's a little off topic, but
it's off topic, Matthew. So I'm battling that one. So let me try to answer this real quick.
Okay.
Matthew and I have very different stories. I started my company almost right away with very little experience, and that's super exciting. But at the same time, I felt like I paid a heavy price, which is I had really nobody to mentor. I had nothing to kind of mirror myself after. I was never on conference calls. with any client. So I didn't even know how to conduct myself on a conference call. So if I could tell myself some advice, I would say, go work for a great company, a company that's going to allow you kind of in the boardroom, if you will, to be on some of these client meetings so that you can learn and grow. And not that you have some kind of devious ulterior motive, but you're kind of making a plan for like how you want to run your company someday, whenever that day may come. How to manage people, and you're going to learn how sales are done, how to close business, how to bid jobs. What do you do when things go bad? And you get to learn that by working with somebody. And the best way to do that is actually not on a freelance level, but to actually take a staff full-time job, because they, generally speaking, they limit what they will show a freelancer, because a freelancer is a hired gun. You're a mercenary. You're there to do a job. So we're not going to make an investment in you, but we'll make an investment in our staff. We'll send them on training programs. We'll give them resources. We'll do whatever it is that we can to help them grow, because that's how we grow as a company.
Right. Great. And sorry for taking you off track. I realized
No.
off that was. So there's another question then in terms of delegating. Like, what are some of the first steps that you would do if you're starting to delegate work? Or like, what are some of the things that you need to consider, or how would you begin doing that? Because I know it's very challenging for somebody to just say, hey, do the work. I know earlier we covered art direction and making sure that there's very clear parameters for somebody to work in. But what other things do people have to know if they're hiring their first freelancer employee and they're delegating that work?
Okay, let's make this very, very specific. Is there a person who's asking that? Let's bring them online.
Yeah, let's
or
see.
not.
It might take a while. Yeah.
Okay, if it takes a while, let me just talk through this thing here, okay? Let's come up with a scenario here. And I'm thinking maybe you need somebody to design a logo for you. I think that's broad enough that people can understand, okay? And you're a logo designer yourself. So what I want to do is I want to look for somebody who's really good at drawing the kind of logo that I think my client's going to buy. And as you look through pages like Behance or Dribble or wherever else you're going to look for work, or Instagram, and you find that somebody's really good at hand lettering, and it's kind of that rough hand lettering style, and that's what you want. You want to find several examples of that feel like, yeah, I think this person's going to get it. And you would hire them. And you would say, look, I need you to come up with 5 ideas. We'll finish 1. I need a couple of iterations in between. And hopefully you have the same agreement with your client that they want something that's going to be like hand lettered. Or potentially you could do this as an alternative to something that you're doing. So this is a great way to multiply and scale your efforts. So for example, if you're not a good hand lettering artist and it takes a long time to acquire those skills, and maybe you want to do something more corporate, something that's going to be probably a more modification of a clean typeface, and then you're able to present these other options to the client, that's an awesome way to expand and to grow the kind of creative work that you can do. So then you can present 2 different styles to your client and say, look, I think this is appropriate, and based on our conversation, this is appropriate. And I know this is kind of pushing the edges of what we talked about, but I feel like it's still within what it is that is appropriate for your company and your brand. So that's another way that you do it. Is that what they're asking, Matthew? And are they online? Are they ready to talk to us?
No, I couldn't find them in the
group
of many. So, but I think just to also recap that, like, I like that you're starting with something that you might know, right? For instance, logo design. So for me, when I would hire freelancers in the past, it would always be people that I know do similar things as me. And what I would have to do is I look at my own process and document that. What are the steps it took me to get to the first iteration, the next revision until final delivery? I've internalized that process, and I document those things now on Notion. Before, it's just all mental or I'll write it down. So now I have this gut feeling for how long and how much effort something is going to take from my own experience. So now when I go hire freelancers, I kind of map that to them. It's like, here's how I would like to work. I know you have your own way. Can we work together in this? And can you meet all of my expectations at all of these milestones? Does that sound good to you? And then if the answer is yes, because I always leave them the space to say no, then I know that that's something that we can do together. But because I have those skills myself, just in case it doesn't work out with that new freelancer, I could still jump on the box and fix the work.
Right.
So
there's something else I want to bring up here that is kind of relevant to what we're talking about here, which is when I asked, or I mentioned to you guys, you should ask the potential artist, what's their process like? what I didn't mention is I'm looking for kind of a mirroring of my process, right? I want to find somebody that's very compatible with the way that I like to work. So what we're doing is we're kind of weaving these things together. So when they do this and I do this and I see, oh yeah, we're very similar, we're very compatible, and I love doing work that way. So, and you do, so I don't anticipate there being a problem. Here's something else I want to say to you guys. You've been on both sides of this spectrum where you've hired people and people have hired you. And you know when you've had a good boss or a good client, try to be the best client too. Like, I don't want to talk about like just taking advantage of people or hiring people at a lower rate and charging more money. I want you to be a good custodian of creative work and be a champion for creativity. So something that I like to ask people is, what is the ideal client scenario for you? And then to say to them quite literally, and I've done this for a lettering artist that we've worked with, is to say, I'm going to be the best client you've ever had. And of course they like think, really? Is that possible? And then later on, I would get a text message saying, man, when you said that, you are the best client. Because what I try to do is to be very clear and say, I really like that style for this design. If you can do that, to try to limit how many times I ask them for a revision, because we were super clear to begin with. And if they come in with an alternative idea, I'm also open to that. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I like that better. So I'm open and I'm more malleable. And mostly the reason why that can work is because we've been able to define the cone, the variable, what is that called? The variable, the corridor of variance, so that we know that they can explore between here and here. There's lots of options in between. This is what we're talking about when we say we're going to allow them to use all of their creativity to come up with more ideas while keeping it relevant to our project. Okay, Matthew, should I go back to the deck?
Yeah, let's move on to the next bit.
Okay, let me share the screen. I'm mindful of time here. We started a little bit late. Trying to keep this to 45 minutes. Okay, so what's the true cost of not delegating? Because this is where a lot of people get hung up. They say, I can't afford to do this. It's not in my budget. And that could be true. So let's look at some things here. And I think this is going to help you a lot. This is an exercise that my business coach, Keir McLaren, who you've seen on the show, he had me do. And it started to help me realize really quickly what I was doing wrong. So you could go through this exercise yourself. You could screen capture this right now, right? What are you worth? And you can write down every role and job function that you perform as a solopreneur, as a single business owner, and just fill that sucker out. You're doing client management, or so account management. You're being the art director. You're the designer, and you might build the mock-ups. You might retouch images, and then you're going to package this up for delivery. So there's a producer coordinator in there. So write all those things down, and then assign an hourly rate that is a fair rate to pay somebody to do each one of those tasks. You're going to quickly realize that it's not one fee or one hourly rate for each of those tasks. And then you'll find out really quickly the cost of not delegating, because the one role, the most valuable role, is your true value. So everything that you're doing that doesn't get you your true value is going to cost you money per week, per year. And here's what it would look like. So here's the example, right? Boom. So if I'm doing business development and sales, to hire somebody to do that job, I might be $150 an hour. To do strategy and UX, and these are just numbers just so you guys get a comparison here: visual design, copywriting, project management, and maybe some development work for WordPress, okay? Then you look at the cost of not delegating, right? So if I'm working at the $150 rate and I'm doing the work, then I've lost the company no money. But as soon as I do anything else that is at a lower rate, now it starts to become very clear as to how much you're costing your company, yourself, when you don't give that work to somebody else. And it might not look like a lot, but over the days and turns into weeks, into a year, you can see that the cost to your company is quite significant. So if I did anything other than business development and sales, ultimately, I'm going to cost myself, my own company, my family, the people that count on me, somewhere around $811,000 a year. This is assuming it's a 40-hour work week. I can't remember exactly how I did this math, but all right. So we want to be able to hire other people. So how do we figure this out? How can I afford to hire people? So this is the other side of that equation. the estimation formula. It looks something like this. Of course, you can fill in whatever variables you want, but I'm going to give you what I recommend that you do. So R is the rate, the cost to produce something, either a freelancer, like an hourly daily rate, or a project rate. And what you're going to do is you're going to multiply R by a factor of 2 to 3. More if you want to make more profit, a little less if you feel like, you know what, they're already very expensive. I don't think my clients can afford this. And this will get you a rate that you would use to charge a client. So let's look at an example. Okay, so the formula is R times a factor of 2 to 3. Okay, so if a freelancer's rate is $400 a day for an illustration or something like that, I want to multiply that times 2.5. That seems reasonable to me. So the price to the client would be $1,000. So I'm going to pay them $400, which they feel is a fair rate. Remember earlier on, I talked about negotiating a fair rate. So they say, Chris, I'd be really happy to get $400 a day. I'm like, super, that's fantastic. Now I got to go out and sell it for way more than that. And why do we do that? Why do we need to sell the project for 2.5 times? Some of you guys are going to have a moral or ethical dilemma with this. That why is it worth more? Well, let's talk about this. Every once in a while, you hire somebody. Let me stop this part. Every once in a while, you're going to hire somebody and it's not going to work out and you've already paid them money to do the work. What are you going to do now? Go ask your client for more money because you don't know how to manage projects, because you weren't good at picking talent? You can't do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to eat the cost yourself. So now it becomes a thing where you're going to actually pay to do the job, which then you're going to become really frustrated and angry. And ultimately, it's going to create some friction between you and the client, and they're unaware of the situation altogether. 2, creatives, including you are notorious for underestimating how long it takes to do something. Matthew's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about, right? So when you ask a person, like, how long will it take to do? They're thinking, oh, I'll impress that person by saying it'll only take me 4 days. So you put into the budget 4 times $400, which is $1,600. And then you're on day 5 and you're only halfway through. What are you going to do? Again, the same conclusion, because you can't ask your client for more money because it's not their fault. They didn't pick this person. They're not in control of the managing of this person. The only thing that they're responsible for is excessive amounts of revision, and that's it. The rest falls on you. Again, you're going to start to lose money. This is why you need to be able to charge a rate to account for the fact that people aren't great at estimating their time, and that people do screw up, and sometimes you pick the wrong person. And remember, back at the very beginning of this webinar, I said, if it's a problem that can be solved by writing a check, then you don't have a problem. I always want to make sure I never have any problems, because I should feel okay. Like, all right, it didn't work out with Bobby. I really loved Mary's work, but for whatever reason, I read the situation wrong and I got a red flag from her. So I hired Bobby, and now to my regret or my remorse, I'm gonna have to hire Mary. I hire Mary, I write the check, the problem is solved. We don't have a problem anymore. And that's what you have to do, okay? Now, you're gonna ask yourself this question. So when do I start doing this? And the answer is on my hand. The answer is on my hand. The very first time you get a job. So as a freelancer, as a solopreneur, as a single business owner, a sole proprietor, as soon as I get work, my brain starts to think, who can I hire to do this work? Who's amazing at doing the thing that the clients want us to do? So I'm going to hire the best web developer. I'm going to hire the best UX designer, visual designer, and go down the list. And I already have a roster of these people ready to go. I already know their rates. So then now I can bid the project, and I'm going to account for the fact that they're going to charge me one rate, the cost to produce, and the price to the client are 2 very different things. This is how I make money. This is how I save up for a vacation, or to put money away for a 401k, or save up for retirement. This is very, very important. Now, most of us just work hand to mouth. We mistakenly think that we're profitable because we're getting paid, and that's not true. Profit is after all expenses have been deducted, including your time. And that's what you need to do, okay? All right, Matthew, I'm gonna get ready for the last part. Is there anything that's popping up in our 104 questions that we're not gonna be able to answer on this webinar?
Yeah, there's a lot, but I think there's some that's to summarize. So like, how do you properly estimate time? when you're doing these things, because I like that you're putting in excess funds in there for fudge factor, right? In case they
Yeah,
mess
the
up,
fudge
you mess
factor.
up, whatever, right? Just you have that room in there just in case.
Mhm.
But how do you manage and estimate the time? And I think part of that is under how long it would take you. So you have that past experience as a reference point. But then also leaving enough room for things that you might not be considering, right? So if you think that it would take an artist 3 days to do something, I would probably add at least 2 more days on that, or at least 1 more day, just so you have a little bit of breathing room in case you get to that 3rd day, you're working with that freelancer and you're like, you know what? It's not there yet. I need a little bit of room to make some adjustments before the client sees that. And then
Right.
after that, when you post the work to client, some people don't figure out how long is it going to take the client to give us feedback. So you also have to consider that. If you're working with clients that are very savvy, like if they work in the ad agency world, they can give you feedback within 24 hours the next morning. Other clients where it's clients direct and they work in a completely different industry and they're not savvy, sometimes they could take 72 hours or a whole week, and you need to ask them up front and make sure that all of that stuff is considered so that you're just not waiting in the hot seat at your computer, or your freelancers, you're not paying them just to keep a seat warm while you're waiting for feedback from the client. So these are all things that you guys have to just be aware of and consider all the steps it takes in any given project for you to post, do revisions, get feedback, and ultimately deliver. So those are things that you just have to gain with experience, and make sure you just add a little bit of cushion time, especially if you're new.
I do want to say this because this was really about understanding how and why you should give work to other people, why you should hire people so you can grow your business. This person is asking a very specific question about how to estimate projects. And we have a module on budgeting and estimating, and that's really what we covered briefly in the previous webinar. So you want to check that out, go onto YouTube and check out that video, okay? It's live and it's available still for the time being. Now, that's not the deep dive, because what we want to do is learn how to bid. And so we've talked about this before. There are 3 ways to bid: pricing inputs, pricing outputs, and pricing based on value. And you can do all 3 really well, and there's different ways of doing things. So I don't want to derail the conversation. I want us to keep really focused. See, so here's another example when we have a very clear goal of what this webinar is about. So when we hear things that go outside of this goal, we have to refrain from the temptation of like, yeah, let's talk about X, Y, and Z and bounce all over the place. So Matthew and I have a very clear goal as to what this webinar is supposed to be about. So we're trying to keep it within that kind of variance corridor. Okay. All right. We're in the home stretch here. I see that there are 2 people who have raised their hand. Matthew, Hadil, who I know, and Alan. No. Oh, now 3 people raised. Okay, it's popping on and off. So why don't you chat with them to see if they're ready to come online and talk to us and what they want to talk about, Matthew. And I will share the last part of my deck here. Okay, so the truth is, if you're doing all the work, you're too busy working in your business and not on your business. And what we want to do is we want to change that, okay? So tasks that you should retain. And this is from this book called How to Delegate by Robert Heller, okay? 1 is leadership. What you want to do is be able to provide the drive and stewardship of your company. They're looking to you to guide where we're going to be. What direction are we going to go in? What kind of markets do we want to get into? How do we want to be positioned? What's our voice and tone? What kind of clients are we trying to go after? That should be you. Strategy. This is something that you should retain. What you want to be able to do is to establish key targets and the means of fulfilling them. This is what we want to do. And here's what I think it's going to take to get there. Okay, so you're going to be planning for the future. And we're talking about short, medium, and long-term goals. This needs to come from you. Okay. Number 3, client relationships. This is really, really critical. You're supposed to be the person maintaining the key customer relationships. This shouldn't be a thing that you're delegating out, because at the end of the day, if this happens, the relationships with the clients belong to someone else and not you. So guess what happens? People quit, people leave, people are poached by other companies, and they bring those clients with them, because people hire people who they like and know. Since they don't know you, they can't like you, they're moving on. And lastly, results. So what you want to be able to do is we often refer to it as a postmortem, where we review and assess what has happened so we can determine what we've learned and what we can do to improve upon our process, right? This is about assessing outcomes and the applications of the lessons learned. So something that we have done in the office is our producers are asked to record the meeting, the call, and to be able to take notes and to summarize things and to bullet point them and send them on to the client after getting approval from the creative team. And that's happened over years of working, where everybody was taking notes and then nobody was taking notes and then nobody was talking to the client. And we talked about being responsive. So this is how we do it at Blind. We take notes. We say, this is what was important. Here's what we discussed. Is this what you recall? Is this correct? Yes, that's fantastic. We want to be able to do that within 24 hours of the call. All right. So those are the things that you need to retain. Now, the reason why we're doing this business bootcamp and the webinar to begin with is because we think there are many of you guys out there who are struggling through your business, who are potentially leaving a ton of money on the table because you're losing business because you don't know how to estimate, you don't know how to talk to clients, you don't know how to negotiate. So I'm going to tell you what the business bootcamp is about, and hopefully you'll determine if it's right for you or not. So what is it? It's a 6-week course, video lectures, 2-hour live Q&A sessions each Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. There's a bonus Q&A course recap. So that's week 7. There'll be homework that you do every single week. We include worksheets and self-study assignments. There's a private Facebook group, and you'll have lifetime access, including updates. Some people are considering taking it, but have projects or they're traveling. That's totally okay. You can enroll in the class or the course and catch up. But I would discourage you from taking the course if you don't have the opportunity or time to attend the Friday meetings, because they're really important to your personal growth. We can answer questions, things that didn't make sense, or things after you applied you need further clarification on, because obviously we can't cover every kind of scenario. This is what we do in the 2-hour live Q&A sessions each and every single week. The price is $3,995. I think that's a bargain. It should be priced way more than that, but that's the price right now. There's 6 modules, and these are the 6 modules: mindset and communication, diagnosing the problem, overcoming sales objections, pricing strategies, what we talked about in terms of bidding and estimating, pricing based on input, output, or value-based pricing, learning how to close and onboard the client for smooth delivery from beginning to end, and a deeper dive into delegating and how you give tasks to other people. We've only had enough time to kind of touch the tip of the iceberg there. That's it. So what else? Also comes with the legal kit, which includes a master service agreement, employee freelancer agreement, release forms, collection letter, etc. We include bid forms. There's a couple of examples. So you'll learn how to bid if you're pricing based on inputs or outputs, right? So it's 7+ hours of training that are all edited and indexed for easy consumption. And you can watch it as many times as you want. People often say to us, the concepts made sense the first time, but they had to revisit 5, 6, 7 times to absorb all the information that we're sharing with you guys, okay? And it includes what we think is a summary of everything that you need to have to know to be able to run a successful business in 2018. Forms, strategies, documents, everything that you need, okay? So if you're feeling you're a person on an island and you're struggling and the world's crumbling around you, we're here to help you. We're here, okay? It starts September 4th, 2018. Thank you very much for being a part of this. Now I'm going to come back to see if we have some people joining us. All right. Matthew, who we got?
All right. So hopefully I say this right. Zaniel, let me unmute him real quick.
Mm-hmm.
How about you
Hi,
introduce
Chris.
yourself so I could get the name right?
Yeah, that's right. Basically, I'm a bit nervous, Chris. Meeting with
Okay. Don't be nervous, but you do need to speak up a little louder because I can barely hear you.
Hello, is it audible now?
Yes? Yeah?
Much better.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to ask, as I'm building up something new, basically, I'm going for building up something new. So in that genre, basically, I don't have someone who I could delegate work to. So how do I start with teaching them that this is the thing that you have to do, or basically means you have a kind of style of doing things. People love you for that style, and they expect that work out of you. And then you have to bring everyone on that same page. So how do you build that stuff?
Okay. I'll take this in a couple different ways. Okay. So is it Zenio? Thank you very much for that
Yes.
question. All right. So I'm going to give you an answer. And if you want more information, we'll do a follow-up. Okay. So here we go. When you're first starting out, and we all start out somewhere from nothing. I mean, I didn't start a company with 10 employees. I didn't start a company with 10 clients. So I understand what you're going through. Can you put yourself on mute again?
Yeah, I'll mute him.
Thanks, Matthew. Okay. The first thing that you're going to do, and this is the easy, like the low hanging fruit, is you get somebody interned for you. This could be a paid position or it could be an unpaid position, but I want you to be fair and ethical about how you manage this so you don't take advantage of people. Do want to say that. So your intern could work for you and you can give them all the tasks that you do that you think you can assign to somebody else. For example, this is what I do to my own kids here, right? I teach them how to cut out images in Photoshop because that's a task that I have to do. I also have to name a lot of my assets within my library. So I've taught them how to do each and every single thing. So I'm taking a complex skill and I'm breaking it down into bite-sized pieces and I assign it to somebody. And every time they master one skill, they move on to the next skill. And over time, what happens is where you're doing 100% of the work, you start to do 90, 80, 70, 30, and it gets lower and lower. And so they're also growing in their skill level. So this is how you teach people to work in a very specific way. Okay. You mentioned something about, I have a style and clients expect this kind of style. That is true. So here's the other part to this. So they're working on the project. And when you see something that's not your style, this is where coaching and art direction come in. It's not going to happen automagically. You're going to say, look, I see what you're doing here. Let me sit down with you. The way that you're composing a shot isn't really great. So let me talk to you about how to do that. Here's what I would do. And you sketch and you draw. I'm like, do you have any questions? No? Okay. After 2 or 3 times of doing this, this person should learn and start to understand what it is that you're doing. And you have to be a good teacher. You have to say, here's what I'm looking for. Here's the decisions I'm making. And I'm going to share that with you. And if they can't get it after 2 or 3 times, you have to start to think, maybe this person can't do this. They don't have that same ability to learn. And that's okay. You can keep them on the tasks that they're good at and bring in somebody else, but also let them know that this is going to limit their growth within the company, both professionally and financially. Okay. And they can make a decision. Hey, you're not a good teacher, or I don't want to be here anymore. And that's totally fine. What I'm recommending is a little different than just bringing on an intern and delegating some of your tasks. What I'm recommending is you look for people who do really great work that's better than your work. And you go out there and work with your client, knowing in the back of your mind, you have 6 or 7 people you'd really like to work with. So when you're talking to them and you hear a problem that you think is connected to this solution, that's where it's going to be fantastic. Okay, so you're going to put those 2 things together. I have this need, I have this solution, I put it together, and I manage the project, and I make money doing that. All right? All right. You have any follow-up questions? We're going to move on.
We're
Excellent.
good.
Thanks very much for tuning and for asking your question. Matthew, I'm a little tired. It's already now an hour after. Do we have one more thing we want to address real quick before we wrap this up?
Let's see. Man, I mean, there's so many questions that it's so hard to keep up with this stuff. I had somebody else on deck to bring on, but then he didn't really. Well, hold on. All right, maybe he's good here.
Somebody was popping in and out.
Yeah, let me bring him in.
Bring yourself online.
Okay, this is Alan. Here we go. Let me unmute you. Alan, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, your audio's a little low.
We can't even hear you, man.
Can you get close to the mic or speak up?
Hello?
It's super low.
We can barely hear you.
Hello?
All right, maybe you got to work out your audio AV equipment before joining a live Zoom conference call. But you know what? Let's just do this. Since we have you. Whoa, something's working now.
There we go. Now we go. We can hear him.
All right, cool. I don't know what happened there. Chris, I just want to tell you, man, you're very, very helpful and informative, and you've really been bringing awareness to a lot of things that I haven't been aware of in the past with clients and everything. I just want to give you my appreciation. I had a quick question for a situation where you come up with an idea and like a whole plan and everything, and you want to propose it to somebody. In which situation would you find yourself where maybe they don't want to go forth with your idea, or maybe they don't want to how can I say this, like you come up with a whole concept and you don't want to compromise from your concept when you tell them your concept. Like you want to have some kind of discretion and you want to classify your, like I work on scripts. So I want to classify my content. I don't want to just give away my ideas. So how can I find a term of like a playing field where I feel like I'm not compromising too much to a potential client or prospect, and I could maintain my idea, and then I don't compromise my idea by working with somebody and not, that person not following through, and then my idea going around like everywhere else,
Okay. I'm not sure how this is relevant to exactly what we're talking about, but since you're a fan, I'm going to answer it anyways, and we're going to wrap up with, how do you say your name? Is it Alan?
Alan Moinello, yes, Alan.
Is it French, Alan?
It's a French name, but I have a Cuban background. I'm not.
Okay, beautiful.
French.
Okay, Alan, here we go. Go ahead and mute yourself. I'm going to give you an answer, and we can talk about this a little bit. All right. So there's a couple things you asked here, and it's a lot for me to unpack. And if you spelled the future, the first two letters of future is FU. So basically, you're saying, I want to say FU to your client. And that's okay. If you have FU money, the future money, which is like, I don't care. I'm not going to compromise. This is what I'm going to do. And you either get on the train or you get off the train. And if you can do that, more power to you. Okay. Now, a couple of people like watching right now think, my God, that bald-headed Asian guy, he's so salty. We make suggestions. He just tells us to shut that F up, right? Why? Why do I do that? Because when I'm talking about the future, I'm an artist and I get to make content. And I don't care what anybody says. I get to just make this. Nobody's paying me. I get to do it for me. But when I'm working in a business and it's a service to clients, I have to keep that in mind. It's not about me anymore. It's about them. I have to let go of the ego. So if you write scripts, which is what I thought I heard you say, like movie screenplays, I think, right? Scripts. Is that right? Yeah, nod? No? Yeah, okay. If you write scripts, you are also an artist, man. And you want to write a script that this is my creation and I put my heart and soul into it, then just do that and go wait tables and sell your script to somebody at some point. Because there's going to be people telling you, I want to do this kind of story. And you're like, well, that doesn't really interest me. And that's okay. And then there are other kinds of writers who can write kind of on demand, which is, I need a story about a mom and a child who's trying to deal with immigration issues. And you're like, oh, I got it. And you start writing. There's those kinds of people, and they're good at doing that as well. So you just have to make a distinction. Am I in a service business or am I an artist? And it's okay because I have FU money, and that's okay, right? And maybe you don't have a ton of money, and that's okay too. So the way you do this is you get your living expenses really down low. It means you're going to make a lot of sacrifices. So this is where the prototypical image of the artist comes into mind, where they eat paint and they live on the floor and they just don't shower. It's because they're making all these sacrifices for their art. They don't care where they live, if they have heating or whatever, or enough food. They just work and they do their thing. And in the hopes that one day the world will appreciate their gifts. And it happens for some. It doesn't happen for a lot of others, unfortunately. And so I think that's how you can do that. Now, if you're going to work with a client, you can outline your parameters. You can talk about your process. You can say, look, here's how I'd like to work. And I'm only telling you this because if you don't like to work that way, we're probably not a good fit. I'll shake your hand. Thanks for the sandwich. We'll see you next time, right? You can say, what I like to do is get a couple of objectives from you in terms of what kind of story you want, the tone, the length of the story. Then I'm going to work on it. I'm going to give you a plot summary. And if you approve that, I'm going to write the script. But once you approve the plot summary, I don't really get into revisions. Or you could say, I have room to do 2 little revisions, but it's going to follow the spine of the plot. Are you okay with that? Fantastic. Let's do work together. Send me 50% up front. Send me the $20,000 and I'm going to get going on the script. You're done. Okay. Alon, bring yourself back online, unmute yourself, and
Hey.
ask me a follow-up question if you have one.
I feel that way. There's something I wanted to pinpoint out of what you said. You said a lot of great things. The artist and then of services, I find myself in so many situations where it's like, okay, passion project. Oh my God, I get so excited, this whole world. And then I'm like, okay, I got to maneuver and I got to make projects so I could put myself out there and I could open myself up to businesses, because my main priority is bringing awareness to businesses and working with artists. Like I come from a working with artists background. Yeah. So they tend to be a lot more emotional, and they you know, it's a lot more difficult to read them, and sometimes I gotta travel, I gotta go meet. It's crazy, man. But I'm just very excited about everything I've been working on, and like I said again, just thank you so much for the information. And
okay, hold on. Before you go, I do appreciate you. I want to say a couple of things. One, if you like to write scripts, what I'd like to suggest is something different. Okay, most people when they say they write scripts, they're thinking like grand cinematic visions that they're going to write the next fill in the blank, Schindler's List or whatever. They're going to write the next pianist. Okay. I would like to do this. I mean, if you're good at writing scripts, write short stories that somebody can produce, that you can produce with your iPhone, that you don't need a cast of 1,000 and visual effects teams. Just write short little stories and bits and share them with the world. If they're really good, I have an opportunity for you because we need writers. Okay. So prove to me that you can do something. If you want to work with us, maybe we're too small for you. I don't know, but I do need writers. I do need people to collaborate with. Okay. So I got to end this because it's getting late and I'm hungry, and that's how it goes, guys. Okay. So thanks for joining us, Matthew.
Thank you, Chris.
It's time for us to get out of here. Oh, I forgot to the end. I almost forgot, Matthew, the surprise. Here's the surprise. I can't remember who reached out to me on Facebook Messenger or something like that. They asked me, hey, Chris, does the business bootcamp include how to do core and the strategy? Does that come with it, or the brand messaging kit? And I told them, no, the business bootcamp is really for people who are poised to grow their business, who have enough funds and enough clients. I think if you earn right now around $100,000, this is, I think, the right course for you. And if not, I'm not sure you're ready for it. And if you're not, what I would suggest you do is to watch our free content and buy the courses that you can afford, so that you can get to a place where you're making $100,000 a year. And then you can take the business bootcamp and will help you get to the next $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 mark. But here's what we want to do. As of right now, so today's Friday, August 31st, we're going to do this thing where till the end of Sunday, so Sunday at midnight, we're going to offer everybody that's bought this course, and this is retroactive, we're going to throw in the brand messaging kit for you, because I think it might be relevant to some of the things that you're doing. Okay. We're just going to give that away. I don't know what we sell it for, but we're going to give it away to you to be included in this class. So if you guys are part of the first class of the business bootcamp, or if you purchased recently, that's just an added bonus we're throwing in. And that's all I got for you. And for the rest of you guys, I will see you in the bootcamp starting September 4th. All right. I'm out of here.
$300, just so you know.
Oh, $300. Okay.
$300. That's Chris is the author. That's out of the greatness of his heart. And, he just wants to add a little value to anybody's lives wherever he can. So,
okay. Before I say goodbye. And so when I say bye, Matthew, just hang up on us and end the call. Okay. Look at this. What shirt am I wearing right now? Forward progress. Make forward progress every day. Forget about this part. Forward progress. All right, guys. See you guys next time. See you online or whatever else I'm going to see you. See you later.
All right. Bye.